In this video, I'm going to show you how I start a landscape out in the field in plein air and finish it up in the studio. Let's go. Hi, welcome to Paint Coach. I'm Chris Fornatero, here to help simplify oil painting so you can get better faster. All right, first off, I want to hear from you. What questions do you have about oil painting? What questions do you have about plein air painting? You know, what things stop you from painting the way you want to paint? The questions that nobody else is answering on YouTube, the things that, you know, get in your way. Please let me know in the comment section so I can answer those questions, so I can make videos on that. I'm making these videos to help the beginning oil painter, but I need your help to let me know what you are struggling with. Second thing, if you like this video, if you like my videos, please hit the like buttons and subscribe to the channel, because you don't want to miss out when I release new videos, especially because I'm developing a Patreon page right now, and you don't want to miss when I release a video on that. The Patreon page is going to have full-length videos, actual real-time videos of me painting demonstrations with my narration, so it's going to be very in-depth, very detailed. It's also going to have options where you can send me your work, where I can look at your work, can critique it, I can tell you what you're doing well, what you should work on, you know, helping you with any materials, setup, anything like that. So you don't want to miss out when I release that video, so please hit that subscribe button. All right, and lastly, materials. I know that can be one of the most difficult things to figure out. There's so many out there, everybody's using this, using that, you know, what do I use, expensive, cheap, what do I use? I put links in the descriptions of all my videos as to materials that I use. And that I suggest for beginning painters. Now, these aren't the most high-end, top-of-the-line expensive materials that are going to make you poor after you buy them. They are really good quality materials that won't break the bank. Now it is time to go plein air paint, but first we need our materials. So I'm going to grab a French easel, palette with cover, brushes, paint thinner, paper towels, a linen panel, and a backpack to put it all in. A plein air painting requires a lot of materials, and once you get out there, the last thing you want to do is forget one of your materials. I know, because that's happened to me. Come on, don't forget the brushes! And you don't want that to happen, so make a checklist. It'll help you from forgetting something. Also, I always bring backups. Like, even though I load my palette with paint, I will still bring the tubes of paint in case I run out or something happens to that paint, my palette falls over, something like that. Same with mineral spirits. Can't tell you how many times my little cup of paint thinner has spilt, and now I have no more paint thinner. I haven't even started my painting yet, so always bring my bottle of paint thinners with me as well. And also, you can never have too many paper towels. And we're off to the Ringling Museum. This place is absolutely beautiful. I will definitely be going back here to paint more and more. They have so many cool places here. There's some great trees. I was just so happy. I got these big banyan trees. Hope I'm saying that right. That I thought were really cool, and I just never really seen before. And you're not allowed to climb on them. But I found this scene here which I really liked. I liked the trees. I liked the depth that I have with the background, because I got banyan trees in the background. I like these ferns here in conjunction with the grass. Just like a lot of different greens to play with. I like how it's shaded in the foreground and the background is very bright, and just the whole general composition. I got these bright, it's like, I think it's a rose garden in the back, so that's like directing you to the banyan trees. And so I'm gonna crop it somewhere around here. I'm gonna leave out the path. The path didn't really work out for me, so I'm gonna set up my easel here pretty quickly. Got everything locked down, got my canvas, got my palette. Got everything set up pretty quickly within 5 minutes, and I am off to paint. Use a little viewfinder still to kind of grab my composition. And right now I'm using just paint thinner. I didn't use any medium throughout this whole painting. First thing I'm doing, I'm just blocking in the general composition with some burnt sienna and a little bit of cadmium red. Now, I didn't tone this canvas on purpose. It was actually a messed up painting from a couple days ago that I wiped off. That's why it's toned that way. You can still reuse the canvas. Now, getting the drawing right, this took me a long time in terms of my experience plein air painting, but you want to really get good at developing a good composition and be able to get it on the canvas pretty quickly. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is gonna lay down the darks. I'm using a very light wash here. I'm not worried about nailing exact colors. I just want to get something on the canvas to block in general where the major masses are. So So this whole banyan tree, the trunks, the leaves, everything, if you squint your eyes down, it's just one kind of big dark mass. So that's what I did there. I used some ultramarine blue, a little cadmium red, some yellow ochre, and now I got that general shape. I'm not going too quickly. I'm not going into the details right away. I want to get there slowly, one piece of the puzzle at a time. Let's break it down into its most general shapes first, then we'll get a little more detailed, a little more detailed, a little more detailed. So now I'm doing the trees in the background, which are further in the background, so the atmosphere, it's going to make them lighter, cooler, so it's more of a purplish color opposed to the greenish color that I have for the banyan trees in the foreground. So, and I'm also using the biggest brush that I have because I want to do this quick. I want to get it in there and be able to move on. So put in these trees in the background, and again, don't worry about the color being perfectly exact. You just want to get something on there so you don't have a stark white canvas, because that's the hardest thing, is just when you got this really white canvas, you just want to get rid of that as soon as possible. All right, so now I'm putting in these ferns at the bottom. Use some cerulean blue and cad yellow, a little bit of cad red. Did the same with the grass, same with the rose in the background, very warmer, so I got more of a orangish green. And now for the sky, the sun was shining right at me, so it was a very yellow sky, so I put a light, cad lemon with some titanium white. So now I have all the general shapes are there. I got the grass, the ferns, the roses, the trees in the background, trees in the foreground. Now I can start going in with some detail, and you'll see that I will be hopping around a lot. I'm constantly just laying down color, comparing it to other color that I laid down, because it's all about values, especially when you got like a lot of greens, like I do in this one. You got the dark greens in the trees, you have the light greens in the ferns, and you got the also light greens in the grass. So you got to be very careful while you're painting everything, that everything's relating properly, that the ferns are darker than the grass, that the leaves in the tree are darker than the ferns, that the leaves in the background are desaturated and lighter than the leaves in the foreground. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm not just going, only dark and only light. I mean, I am saving the highest highlights, for the end. And I'm working thin to thick. You can see a lot of the paint is still very thin. I do like laying in the darkest darks first though. See, I'm trying to get those in with the tree because it's easier to build with lighter paint over top of darker paint. You see, I'm just kind of going back and forth. I'm doing the ferns, doing the trees, doing the trunks, doing the grass, just kind of cycling through it all. I'm constantly stepping back to make sure everything is working right, and that the trees in the background are sitting in the background, that the trees in the foreground are in the foreground, that things that are in the shade look like they're in the shade, and the things in the sun look like they're in the sun. So now I'm adding a little more detail into the ferns here, and the foreground, banyan trees. Banyan trees had a lot of really interesting colors. They had everything from purples in there. A lot of greens were reflecting onto the banyan trees from the leaves around it. So that's just something that you can't. It's gonna be really hard to get that with a photograph. So now, because if I wanted, I could take this and make a larger painting out of it with the correct colors. It's just really hard to get all those little nuances in a photograph. Another hard thing is distinguishing the grass from the ferns. That is something I had a lot of trouble with when I first started plein air painting, was just distinguishing all the different greens. And a little tip, little trick, when mixing like any grass greens, using cerulean blue and cad lemon just to get going. Starting, you might have to add some red in it to desaturate a little bit. That's a good start for a grass green, because the grass is going to be it's going to be a lot lighter, whereas the greens in the trees, the leaves and everything, are going to be a little more be a lot darker. Well, I looked at the sun here. Things had changed. Even though I wanted to keep painting, I felt it was time to wrap it up and walk away. All right, now we're back in the studio. I got my iPad, I got my panel up there on the easel, and some things that I'm looking at here is I want to add some darks, you know, develop these ferns a little more, add a little more detail, make them read more like ferns. Touching up the grass here, and the tree in the top right corner, that needs a lot of work. I probably didn't even really touch that up at all. I'm going to darken that up and put some sky holes into the tree. So I'm working on. Now the thing with adding those little sky holes, the sky coming through the tops of the trees there, when you mix up your sky blue, you want to make it a little darker than your sky, because what's happening is the light is shining through those trees and those leaves, and not all of the light is getting through. So those holes tend to be a little darker than what you think. It's not just the exact pure color of the sky behind it that you would see, you know, lower in the painting where you're just seeing just the sky. So I do add a little more cerulean blue and actually a little ultramarine blue for the sky. So I did add a lot of that when I put in these sky holes that I'm going to put in later. But a lot of this in the studio is, I'm not using the photo for color reference. I'm really looking mostly at the painting and seeing what's working and what's not. You know, why isn't my background sitting, you know, as far back as I want it? You know, why isn't the stuff in the sunlight popping like I want it to pop? And a lot of times that can be that my brights aren't bright enough. A lot of times it can be my darks aren't dark enough, because things are only as bright as the things around them are dark. If you put a bright yellow brushstroke on a white canvas, it's not going to look very bright. You put that same yellow brushstroke on a dark canvas, it's going to look extremely bright. So just think about that when something isn't looking as bright as you want it to. Think about the colors around it influencing it. And I had to show a lot of restraint on this not to get into those banyan trees, because it might be hard to see on the camera, but I gotten the colors that I really liked in it. But there were some structural things that I wanted to change in the studio, but I did not have the colors in the photo, so I really didn't want to lose the colors that I grabbed out there in the field. So I kind of, was very careful when I was painting around those areas, because I wanted to keep those really good colors that I had. Also, with the sky in the background, I never went to pure white. The bottom I used actually yellow ochre and white, and faded it up to the sky, which was like a cerulean blue and then a little ultramarine blue towards the top of it. In this case, I was doing a landscape where I was actually kind of looking. The sun was backlighting my landscape, and forget where I heard it. A really well known plein air painter said that when you go out there, kind of choose a scene that's looking towards the sun, or the sun is shining towards it. When it's on the side, it just kind of makes things more difficult to paint with all the shadows and everything. So kind of keep that in mind. That's why it's never the best to go out and paint right in the middle of the day when the sun's right overhead. It just doesn't really make, it's kind of flat, and you don't get as much depth with your compositions. And here I'm not even using any medium. I'm using just straight paint out of the tube. I'm keeping it pretty thick because I'm in towards the last section of my painting. I'm putting paint on layers and layers of paint already on the canvas, so I'm keeping things pretty thick as I do this, and that's kind of how you get that thick, almost impressionistic look. A lot of times, I remember when I first started painting, I thought when I saw paintings where the paint was really thick that they did it thick right from the start, and it's actually like a building process to where the top layers are actually the thickest layers, because you have to build towards that. And there you go. I'm pretty happy with this one. I'm really happy how I handled a lot of the different kind of greens and the depth that it has. So there you go. Plein air painting on site, taking it in, finishing up in the studio, the whole process. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss out when I release other videos, especially when I'm working on this Patreon page. I'm gonna release a video on that. You don't want to miss it. Again, any materials, links in the description. If you want to see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I am Chris Fornatero here, telling you to go get painting.